Thank you for joining us today for Around the World. My name is Heather Jacobson, and I'm the Coordinator of International Student Services at Pacific Lutheran University. Around the World is a part of International Education Week, a national initiative by the U.S. Departments of State and of Education that seeks to promote and celebrate the benefits of international education and exchange. And in a year when a global pandemic has forced us to stay closer to home and minimize our contact with others, it feels more important than ever to broaden our horizons and embrace opportunities for global and cultural learning. So we have 3 student panelists who you see on the screen who are going to share about a country that they have a personal connection to. While you're listening to the panelists, please type any questions you have into the Q&A box, and you should see that option on the bottom of your screen. After all the panelists have presented, we will invite them to respond to your questions. All right, so I'm going to ask our number 2 and number 3 panelists to turn off their videos, and then we will turn it over to Damad to start.
So my name's Damad. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a nursing major, and I'm a first year here at PLU. And the country I'm going to be talking a little bit about is Bosnia. I was born in the United States, but I grew up most of my childhood in Bosnia. And let me just pull up the presentation. So this is Bosnia. You can see with this little icon right over here, it's called the heart-shaped nation because it looks like a heart. So I guess we'll start a little bit with the historical context of the country. It was a country that was part of Yugoslavia, so it's an ex-Yugoslav country, which was a multinational country that had many different ethnic groups, as these up here. So that included Bosnia, Slovenia, Macedonia, Serbia, and all those different countries, Croatia. And it was a socialist republic under a dictator named Tito, leader Tito. Yeah, Tito was an interesting character. I didn't know him personally. This was a long time ago. I was born in 2001. But from what my parents have told me, he was more like benevolent, but he had like a strong character. He defeated both Hitler and Stalin during invasions of Yugoslavia, like around the World War II era. But soon after, he died, and then the economy kind of went to a collapse. And all the different ethnic groups and nations gained independence, and there was kind of this rising nationalism, and it kind of sparked a civil war that lasted quite a long time, and it ended with a genocide in Bosnia. Let's see. So yeah, the genocide was a pretty big part of Bosnian history and culture. It's still kind of talked about today, but the norm is that you don't really talk about it in public, and it's not really like taught in schools, but everyone's aware of what happened. And it happened from 1992 to 1995. It was a targeted series of ethnic cleansing. So I have a little video here that kind of goes over that. And also, trigger warning, this is going to mention topics of killing and like sexual assault. So if you don't want to like watch the video, you can feel free to step away or whatnot.
The Srebrenica genocide stands as one of the worst episodes of ethnic cleansing in Europe after the Second World War. Over 5 days, 8,000 unarmed Bosnian Muslim men and boys were massacred by the Bosnian Serb military forces, while thousands of women were raped. But the story of the mass murders and persecution of Bosnian Muslims does not begin here. After the breakup of Yugoslavia, military conflict quickly erupted, first in Slovenia and Croatia, and finally Bosnia. And while there were losses on all fronts, Bosnian Muslims seemed to pay the highest price. Only a month after the Bosnian Declaration of Independence in March 1992, a Serbia-based paramilitary group attacked the city of Bijeljina, slaughtering between 48 and 78 non-Serb civilians in a single day. This was the beginning of what would become 4 years of killing, persecution, and rape. Soon after, other towns along the Serbian border started to share the same fate. Between May and August 1992, in the city of Prijedor, over 3,100 non-Serb civilians were massacred, the majority of them Muslims. When the massacres began in other cities on the border with Serbia, it was clear that the aim was to ethnically cleanse the region from the Muslim population. In the city of Visegrad, between April and August of the same year, another 3,000 Bosnian Muslims were killed, 70 of them locked up and burned alive in a local house. Concentration camps began to appear. A hotel near the city was used as a brothel camp, where women and girls as young as 7 were continuously raped, some for over 8 months. By the end of 1992, there were close to another 3,000 victims in the cities of Zvornik, Vlasenica, and Tuzla. The massacres that happened in the city of Foča, with 2,074 Muslim victims, paved the way to what was to eventually take place in Srebrenica in 1995. The UN safe zone of Srebrenica, where over 8,300 people were murdered, was the last city of eastern Bosnia from which the Muslim population was purged. Along with the Markale massacres in Sarajevo, they became the 2 main reasons that the international forces stepped in and began the peace process.
So we can stop the video right there. So yeah, Bosnia has a long history of tension between different ethnic groups, long history of civil war and all that sort of stuff. Oops. And I'm wondering how I can get out of this. There we go. Okay. And the United States actually got involved too. They bombed Serbia and then kind of helped with like international peace afterwards. And one of the people that was part of that peace process was Joe Biden. He was in the Senate at the time, and he was kind of like starting all these peace processes and getting different policies done. And then the next little short video is just explaining like a survivor's tale, like kind of her perspective of things. So, let me full screen.
Evo baš ima jednom i ondje jabuka što smo kalemli dolam jabuku pred rato, evo je sad rađa i ja sad odem nakupim tije jabuka i ostaćem kao ovo moja djeca kalema jabuke, ja sad imam jabuka, ali njiha nema, njiha više nema. Ovca moj djecu izrodila, ovdje ste ih poubijali, ja se vratila na more. I ovdje živim usprkos njima. Kad ih vidimo, ja bi me sin njemu skočila zakuša, njemu oči vadila.
Okay. So yeah, it's pretty common. This topic, when it comes up in Bosnia, it's common for people to get angry. And a really important thing to point out also is genocide denial is common here. Like the previous video, everyone suffered from all fronts, but the Bosnian like Muslim ethnic group suffered a lot, and it was kind of a targeted attack. So yeah, genocide denial is still a very real thing in like the present time there. Okay. So next, For modern problems happening right now, voting is a really big issue, and we'll get to that in the next slide. But it's really hard to get your voice heard just because of the voting system. It was made to kind of represent each ethnic group, but the way it works is kind of hard, and you'll see. I'll show a video. And then youth unemployment is really, really high. I think it's a little bit over like 50%, which is really high for unemployment rate in a country. Often men will work like construction or like blue collar jobs, and then women will often be expected to just be like a stay-at-home mom, but things are changing. And then lack of justice, like I said, a lot of the gunmen and war leaders are still out there. So a lot of people feel like they didn't get the justice from what happened. So that causes further tension. And then broken infrastructure in mines. There's still thousands upon thousands of active mines in Bosnia that people are still trying to figure out. So, yeah. And then this little video, I'm not gonna play all of it, but it's just gonna talk about the voting system just because it's really messed up.
Imagine you live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you're one of the 46% unemployed young people who desperately wants to change something. They always tell you the best way to make a difference is to vote. So you walk in, and they give you this, probably the longest ballot ever. And you need it, because this is a country with 14 separate parliaments, 5 presidents, hundreds of representatives, and not to mention 136 appointed ministers. That's a bit of a headache, but a price worth paying to fulfill the obligation of citizenship. So, how do you vote in Bosnia-Herzegovina? Let's break it down. First, you get to vote for a member of the presidency, a 3-member body that replaces a single president, each representing one of the 3 constituent people: Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs. The presidency is mainly in charge of foreign policy. All decisions they make regarding it should be based on consensus, with rare exceptions when deciding on international agreements. As views among major ethnic groups usually differ, Bosnia mostly abstains from voting at international institutions.
Okay, we'll stop it right there. So there's many different things you can vote for, but the way that the ballots are made are really, really hard. And it's confusing. Like the video said, there's technically 5 presidents and they rotate in different periods. So it's just a big political mess. And then for the aftermath, electricity capacity declined by 4/5, which is a lot. So, I mean, even still today, a lot of buildings don't have electricity or AC. So if you go there, it's pretty warm outside. So yeah, it's kind of hard to cool down. And then 35% of highways and 40% of bridges were destroyed. And the European Bank loaned Bosnia $20 million, and they're still trying to pay that off and figure it out. And then 120,000 active mines today. So the aftermath of the war is still lingering. Okay, now to kind of talk about calmer things, I guess. For the music, it's really interesting. Right now there's like modern music, which is a mix of different like Slavic languages and the ethnicities kind of combined all together. And there's this artist, Senida, and I'm pretty sure she's from Slovenia, but she also does songs in like Bosnian, so it's a kind of cultural mix music. And then there's Sevda, which is or Sevdalinka, that's another word for it. It's like classic folk music, usually about war or like ancient stories from like the Middle Ages, because Bosnia used to be kind of like a kingdom. And then there's also Ilahia, which is holy like Islamic music, which is often played for people that are pretty like faithful. And then those are some of the artists here. Yeah. And then the food, my favorite part. It's really, really good. So up here we have, these are called cevapi. They're kind of like meat rolls, and they're grilled, and they're really, really good. And they're served with this homemade bread here called lepinja. Also really good. It's kind of like a cloud texture. yeah, it's a good comfort food. And then we have here burek, which is like a meat pie, chorba, it's like a vegetable and beef stew. Coffee is really, really important in Bosnia. Bosnia is like the third most coffee consumer in the world, something like that. It's crazy. And then right here is rakia, which is a type of moonshine that's homemade. And a lot of Bosnians, it's kind of known that when you wake up in the morning, you drink your coffee and you take a shot of the moonshine, and that's how you start your day. It's what everyone does. Sometimes even kids. So, and then right here is hurmashica, which is a kind of like a coconut cake, and it has like a sweet oil over it, and it's good on holidays. And this is some of the beauty, lots of different places. This is Sarajevo, the capital, and this little city, Banja Luka, is where I'm from, or where I was raised. As for family, there's strong gender roles, which is changing over time. It's really family oriented, and you're expected to respect your elders and basically live in the house with your spouse until you're like 30 years old, because basically you have to take care of your parents as they age. And in return, the parents will financially support you a lot. You're supposed to always greet household members. If you're visiting someone, bring chocolates or cookies, take your shoes off. And then there's a big perspective on sharing or collectivism. And it's Bosnia is pretty strong on religion. It's Islam, but it's not like a traditionalist version of Islam. It's more kind of freeing, or there's freedom in it. And then for my story, so I was born in Boise, Idaho, but my parents immigrated to Germany first. Then they weren't accepted, so they eventually came to Boise and they made it here. And they're still dealing with land disputes because of borders drawn over the war. So they still have to go to like international court and all that kind of stuff. A lot of my family still suffers from PTSD and all that kind of stuff too. And then they also had to, during the war, they had to change their names temporarily on passports to get through different checkpoints. So yeah, I spent most of my childhood in Banja Luka, the city that I showed you, and then my mom's city, Prijedor, and then a couple places in Croatia. And I don't know a lot about my family, but I'm currently documenting their stories, kind of interviewing family members, and I'm eventually going to write a novel. I'm working on it currently, but I want to publish it later. And that's me right here, little me. Okay, and that pretty much concludes it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. I haven't seen any specific questions yet, so we'll kind of, what is your favorite thing about Bosnian culture?
Probably the big perspective on family. We have this big holiday called Bayram, and it's twice a year, and it's based on the Islamic lunar calendar. And basically all your family gets together and it's huge. And then if you're a kid, you get a bunch of money from different family members. So it's like every family member gives you like $20. Some give you like $200. It's kind of ridiculous, but it was really, really fun as a kid. And I really enjoyed that.
That sounds like the perfect holiday.
Great. One thing I wanted to point out too that was kind of funny is Bosnians too, they'll give you like $200 and say, go buy yourself a chocolate. They always say that, or they always say like, go get you a piece of gum or something from the store, and they'll give you $200. So it's funny.
We have one other question. Do you have a favorite word in Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, whatever language?
Yeah, I think just because it sounds funny, shishmish, which means a bat. So it literally means like mish in Bosnian means mouse, so like flying mouse. But it sounds funny. So yeah, I like that word.
Perfect. One more time. What's that word?
Shishmish?
Shishmish.
Yeah, it's funny.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So
Okay.
we are going to move to our next panelists. All right, so Wenning, Catherine, if you are ready and want to turn on your video.
Yes,
Perfect. All right, and get ready to share your screen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine. Catherine is my English name. I'm a senior. Because of the pandemic, I believe you spend most of time stay at home. But for me, I haven't been back my hometown 1 more years. Today, I would like to recommend a fun place, my hometown, Qingdao, for you to take a virtual tour. All right. Qingdao is located in the south of Shandong province. The climate of Qingdao is a four seasons distinct city. Qingdao Liuting Airport was built in 1944. When you arrive in Qingdao, this is your first stop. You can use Airbnb to order the hotel. I highly recommend this kind of accommodation near the sea. From the bed, you could just lay and watch the sea. This is the Qingdao subway. Subway is one of the most popular ways to travel in Qingdao. You can take subway to some scenic spots. As you can see, the subway in Qingdao is very special. The decoration is ocean style. This is Zhanqiao. It's a symbol of Qingdao. Come to Qingdao, we'll have to Zhanqiao, this landmark building. It's also a museum. There are many old photos of Qingdao in it. Before you come here, you can prepare some crumbs to feed the seagulls. This is the Mayfair Square. Mayfair Square got its name in memory of the Mayfair's movement. This sculpture named Maywind is a Mayfair Square landmark. It looks like a red fair. There are different sceneries between day and light, but for me, I prefer the light show at the night. This is the 8 Great Passages. You can see the building. I think people's impressions of Qingdao have green trees and red tails. This is 8 Great Passages. It has a long history. Our President Xi Jinping come to Qingdao. He will live here. This is in Laoshan. Beach combing is my favorite activity in Qingdao. I can catch different shellfish. There will be holes in the sand. The second picture you can see there is many holes. You can put the salt in the holes and the shellfish will come out. You don't need any permit to do this activity. About the food, speaking of Qingdao food, beer is the most famous. There are so many kinds of Qingdao beer that you can drink the raw liquor without packaging. In Qingdao, there is no clear legal age for drinking. We have beer festival in every August. This is Qingdao seafood. I know you can eat it in any city along the coast, but Qingdao seafood has a unique taste. This is our seafood dumplings. It looks very special. Qingdao residents make dumplings with seafood. The black wrapper with cuttlefish sauce, and the green one with seaweed juice. Most of the filling is fish conch and crab. This is sea bean jelly. It's made from seaweed. There are many kinds of sea grasses can be used to make sea jelly, such as coral grass and stone cauliflower. All right, that's it. Welcome to Qingdao. Thank you.
Perfect. So we had a question come in. Someone wants to know, how big is Qingdao? Is it considered to be large or small compared to other Chinese cities?
I think it's same to the Seattle.
Okay.
Yes.
And compared to other Chinese cities, like, you know, top?
I think bigger than Beijing.
Really? Okay. Wow. And then, what is your favorite food to eat from Qingdao?
Of course, dumplings.
Which kind of dumplings? You showed us some pictures of multiple kinds.
It's different to other dumplings. I know dumpling is traditional food in China, but the Qingdao dumpling is very special.
Nice. And then, what do you have a favorite Chinese holiday?
Chinese holiday, Spring Festival, because I have long time to rest and I can get some money from my relatives.
Nice. So we have a couple of holidays people like when they get money from their family. Nice. And then, so you're a student here in the U.S. from China. What is maybe a difference, like the biggest difference you've noticed between Chinese and American culture?
I think because of the policy, something can do in China, but something can't do in United States. For example, drinking.
That's true. Yes, we do have some strict rules about drinking here.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. I think that is all the questions we have for now. So thank you so much for sharing about Qingdao. Perfect. All right. If we can, next panelist, turn on your video and mic and we will start your presentation.
Hey, thank you. So my name is Megan. I go by she, her, hers, and I am currently a grad student at PLU. I'm studying marketing analytics. So I was born and raised in Norway, so I'll be presenting on Norway today, but I'm actually a dual citizen, so I'm like half American, half Norwegian, but I didn't move to the US until I started to go to PLU. So for basically my entire life, I lived in Norway. So I am just going to be presenting some fun facts and kind of like general information about Norway. And let's see. Okay, so yeah, no, I guess I covered intro. So some general facts about Norway is we have our capital city that is Oslo, and I forgot to mark it where it is on the map, but it doesn't really matter. It's like on the east side of the country. But one thing that a lot of people don't really necessarily think of is that Oslo is actually a pretty like sizable city, and it's a lot more metropolitan than people think. Because I think a lot of times when people think of Norway, you think of like wooden houses and farmlands and fjords and all of that, which is true. Like that's definitely Norwegian culture. But Oslo, as well as like some larger cities, like Bergen, for example, is another one. We do have some like main metropolitan cities. So I wanted to include like a photo of Oslo here showing that we're not just wooden houses and farms. So we have a population of roughly like 5.5 million. The stats on the presentation is from 2018. But I remember back when we met the 5 million mark, that was a big thing for Norway. We were like, oh my gosh, we're 5 million. And that was probably, I don't know, closer to 10 years ago now. But it's just funny because compared to most other countries, 5 million is like nothing. But we had a lot of Norwegians immigrate to the United States back in like the mid to late 1800s, because Norway was just really poor and not thriving. So a lot of people decided to reside in the US, which is why there's a lot of like Scandinavian Norwegian heritage, and also why PLU exists, was founded by a Norwegian. Our national day, or like our Day of Independence, is the 17th of May, which is very much celebrated in Norway. We wear these, I call them national costumes. I don't really know what else to call them, but they're like traditional gear that we wear. And it kind of depends on where you're from in the country. So my traditional costume doesn't look exactly like the one in the picture, but because it depends on where you're from. But for the most part, I would say the men's costumes look like the one in the photo. And then we have two official languages. We have Norwegian and also Sami. So Sami, the Sami population is our indigenous population. And we also have two official names, I guess 3 if you want to include the name in Sami, which I didn't put in this presentation. But in the Norwegian language, it has 2 official names, and that is because we have 2 written languages. So we have bokmål, which is right here, and that is like, I would say, the general Norwegian, like what everybody learns to read and write in. And then for more of like this side of the country, so the West Coast, I would say a small portion, like it's not a predominant written language in any way, but there is some people who write in nynorsk. So we are taught 2 written forms of the Norwegian language in school. Oh, and I see I misspelled Norwegian there, so that's cute. But we have a anthem, and it's literally translated to "Yes, we love this country," which I've never thought about until I like made this presentation, and I just thought it was funny because Norwegians like love Norway, and it's kind of, we really want to be cultured, if that makes sense, because we know that we're so small. But then we also compare everything to Norway because, I don't know, the anthem is a good example, I guess. And so kind of moving into my hometown, you can see where it is relative to Norway. It's like southwest coast, and it's called Stavanger. So Stavanger has a population of like 120,000 people. And although that is like half the population of Tacoma, I would say the feel of Stavanger reminds me a lot of Tacoma in that it's a city, but it's not like a huge city like Oslo or Bergen, if that makes sense. And so I actually live on an island that's like right outside of the center of town. So if you kind of see like the general area here, you can kind of tell that there's a lot of fjords, island looking things, I guess. So I live on an island, and then this is the bridge to my island right here. My island's called Hundvåg, which directly translates to Dog Bay. And while I was making this presentation, I had my boyfriend next to me who's been there, and he was saying, yeah, Hundvåg is kind of like a fisherman turned city, or fisherman town turned city. And I just thought that was funny because it's kind of like a cute cute description of Hundvåg, I guess, from an American's point of view. So Stavanger is the oil capital of Norway, and oil and gas is definitely the main export that Norway has. And that's a pretty recent like export, because oil was first discovered actually near Stavanger back in 1969, and that was kind of the pivotal mark between Norway being poor and Norway being not poor. So to this day, the oil kind of area that was discovered back then is one of the most significant fields in the North Sea. And then Stavanger was actually, it's been around for a long time. It was founded around the construction of the Stavanger Cathedral, which was around like 1100, 1150. And you can see a photo of the cathedral right here. That is where my parents got married. And I've like thought about getting married there, but I recently found out that there's like a 5-year wait time. So probably not going to do that, but it's a beautiful cathedral, and it's like our most famous landmark, I would say, in my town. I think you might even be able to see it somewhere back here. Like, it's somewhere here. But yeah, this is like an overview. Oh, yeah, that was an overview of Stavanger. And I wanted to talk a little bit about school in Norway as well. I thought that would be fun because, I don't know, compare it to PLU, I guess. So we have 3 kind of levels of school, as most people do. So first you have grade 1 through 7. So we have like a big chunk of our school time that is just basically it directly translates to children's school. And then once you graduate from children's school and you get to 8th grade, you move on to teenager school. And I wanted to include that translation just because it illustrates how Norwegian is a very simple language. And so a lot of the words, kind of like similar to Bosnia, I guess, with the flying mouse for bat, we have very basic language structure. So another example would be like, a fridge is a cooling closet. I just thought that was funny. So yeah, after grade 10, you move into secondary school, or high school, I guess you can call it. And that goes from grade 11 through 13. So we have an additional year compared to at least the American system. But something that's very interesting about secondary school in Norway is you actually have to apply to go to secondary school. So it's not mandatory, but you kind of choose depending on what your interests are whenever you're done with grade 8 through 10. So that's kind of your time to explore your interests, not what you're good at, but what you enjoy doing, right? What do you want to kind of maybe pursue a career in later on? You start thinking about that pretty early in Norway. I don't know if that's similar to the rest of the world, but you can choose between going to more of like a technical college, starting grade 11, where you'll get your, I guess, like diploma, or at least your eligibility to work as, for example, like an electrician or a carpenter or something like that. You can go to school for that and have your, basically be ready to work within whenever you're done graduating high school. So I, on the other hand, kind of chose the other route. So you have like the technical college route, or you can go more general ed, like I just say gen ed route, which is basically either you can do more like STEM version, or you choose more of like a liberal arts direction with the types of courses that you choose. So there is a lot of structure, and there's a lot of choices, I guess, that you can make in terms of what you want to learn in school as soon as you get through grade 10. And a lot of what I've learned at PLU, especially in freshman year, is kind of stuff that was covered during my senior year in secondary school. So it kind of merges into each other, I guess, in terms of like what you learn. And I wanted to include a photo of my high school. So this is my high school right here. And it's, again, just like a general education school. So you can kind of just choose whatever, either STEM or liberal arts. And here is a picture of the inside of my school. This is where you would wait to get your food from the cafeteria. And then up here, you see a photo of Russ. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the Russ celebration in a sec, but basically the senior year of high school or around graduation time, like around April, it's very common for seniors to dress up in these like overalls, and you're either blue or red, depending on your school. And then you like have a bunch of traditions related to that. So I'll elaborate on that as we move on. And then some landmarks in Norway. The most kind of close to home for me is the Pulpit Rock. And that is this one right here. So it's around like an hour and a half, 2 hours away from my house or Stavanger or with a ferry. And actually a fun story that I just thought of that I'll include. Whenever my boyfriend came to visit Norway around 2 years ago, this is where I took him. This is like where I'd take any non-Norwegian person to show them like the nature, I guess. Like this would be my go-to hike. And so I took him there, and him and my best friend were sitting like on the edge here, because that's kind of what you do if you're a tourist, right? You want to like play a little daredevil. And they were sitting on the edge, and I'm like getting anxiety thinking about it, because there was a group of tourists that stood right in front of them, like as they were sitting on the edge, and they almost got pushed off. And I was like standing there, like taking a photo of them. And it was by far the scariest moment of my life. So that was a little sidetrack, but don't mess around with Norwegian fjords, I guess, because they're ginormous. Another example of like a famous landmark is the Troll Tongue, which is got its name because it kind of looks like a tongue. And we have the famous Nidaros Cathedral, which is in Trondheim. And this is kind of like, gives you a general idea of what the older church structures in Norway looks like. It's kind of similar to the cathedral in Stavanger, but obviously it's just a lot larger in scale. But then we also have some older churches called stave churches, which is more like pagan Christianity. I don't know if that even is a thing, but it's a little bit before this era. And you'll see multiple of these like wooden structured churches around more of like the east side of Norway. And then here is also our royal palace. We are a monarchy, so that is where our king and queen sleep every night, or not every night, but yeah. And then this is, I forgot to include the name, but this is Lofoten, which is like really far north in Norway. It's just a pretty Norwegian landscape photo. And then I also wanted to include some fun facts about Norway. So I'll kind of run through them quickly. Basically, we have a guard mascot of the Norwegian king, which essentially just a cheerleader for the monarchy, I guess you could say. But he's a penguin, and his name is Sir Nils Olav, and you will see a photo of him right here. And he lives in the Edinburgh Zoo, which is in Scotland, but he gets regular visits from the Norwegian king. And then Norway is also known for our chocolate. So we have a famous chocolate factory in Norway called Freya, and this is a picture of it right here that's in Oslo. And it actually inspired Roald Dahl to write Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And Roald Dahl, I think, is half Norwegian and half British or something like that. So that's another fun fact. And another thing about Norway is you can camp anywhere at any time, as long as you're 100 meters away from someone's private property. And you also can't stay for longer than 3 days. But it's a very nice part of Norwegian culture, I guess, is that you can just go hike anywhere. You can go explore nature as you please. There are very few restrictions when it comes to kind of where you can set up camp. Norway also has the highest concentration of fjords in the world. And then more fun facts. We also hand out the Nobel Peace Prize. And so here is a picture of Barack Obama in Oslo in 2009 when he got the Peace Prize. And another just fun little story about Norway is we went through a nationwide butter shortage back in 2011, which I remember very vividly because it was right around Christmas time. And so a big part of Norwegian culture is that you'll make a bunch of like, well, not just Norwegian culture, but we make a lot of Christmas cookies and dessert things for Christmas. and you need butter. So the online auctions for one packet of butter reached as high as $77, which is just ridiculous now that I think back on it. And then another quirky thing is we love our frozen pizza. So it's actually so popular that this is our favorite frozen pizza brand, Grandiosa. When they released like a new jingle, it actually reached #1 on the Norwegian charts. Not because the song in itself was great. I just think we love our Grandiosa, and so we wanted to support the cause. And then also Norway has the longest road tunnel in the world, which you can see right here. It has a bunch of cool like lighting on the side of it, and it looks pretty epic. I've never been there myself though. And then Norwegian food. So I'll just start with the waffles. Norwegian waffles, we have like a specific type of waffle iron that you use to make them. And then you kind of like, they're like this when they're whole, and then you break them into little pieces and they look like hearts. And it's super yummy, especially with like raspberry or strawberry jam. But then a lot of people also like to put brown cheese on it, which you can see right here. Brown cheese is another super big like Norwegian food. I think it's goat cheese, but it's just brown. It tastes it has like more of like a sweet taste to it, and it's more like dessert-esque. So you'd like pair it with different types of desserts actually. And then something that's very close to home for me, this is mainly like a West Norwegian dish. It's called kumle. And kumle is like these like potato balls right here. They're made from potato flour. And this is kind of like the center point of the meal, but then it varies whatever like accessorizing pieces of food you want to put next to it. But this is like some different variations. It's kind of just whatever floats your boat. And then obviously lutefisk. I've never tried lutefisk, but that is a very famous Norwegian food. Normally, like more up north, you'll find that. And it's not as common as people think, because whenever people are like, oh, you're Norwegian, oh, you must love lutefisk. And I'm like, no, I've never had it before, but I'm sure it's delicious if you like that. And then we have a lamb and cabbage stew that is like our national kind of dish, and it is not super common to eat just because it takes a long time to prepare, but it's really delicious actually. And I would say this is a good example of just traditional Norwegian food because it's very bland, but good, but it kind of like exemplifies how Norway used to be definitely like a farming country that relied on just like basic vegetables and meats. And then another characteristic of Norwegian food is our breakfast. So it's a pretty light affair, but we love just basic like bread, and then you'll put some butter on there and cheese, and choose some sort of combination of like salami or ham. You can put eggs on there. I put smoked salmon and pickled herring because I know some people put that on there. I don't. But yeah, it's just pretty simple. But if you eat anything other than like a slice of bread with something on it in the morning, then you are an anomaly in Norway, for sure. Ooh, let's see. And yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for all those facts. That was some pretty interesting stuff I learned about Norway here. So we have one question about the national costume that you described. How often would you wear that national costume? Is it just on May 17th or other days?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so you definitely, like the 17th of May is the day that you know that you're going to put on the costume. So it's kind of like the designated day. But the whole idea of it is it's like your finest piece of clothing because it costs, I think it's upwards of $3,000 to like have it made. So it's like your prized possession basically. I actually have mine in the States, which is much to my mother's dismay because she's like, no, keep it at home, secured in the closet. But you could wear it to like a wedding, for example, or like baptisms are pretty popular in Norway, or they're like a big deal in Norway. So you'd wear your bunad to that. So yeah, like formal occasions.
Perfect. All right. So you shared some of like the most famous sites in Norway. What is a site that everyone should see if they're visiting Norway?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if I were to say like go get the Norwegian experience, I think you should definitely go to the West Coast, which is a very general statement, but basically like anywhere in this area, I would probably go to Bergen because it's in the hub of like the fjords. So you get the really beautiful landscape, which I think is like probably the most spectacular thing about Norway. It's just the nature. In terms of landmarks and stuff, there isn't one particular one that would like blow your mind, in my opinion. It's more just like taking in the overall environment. So I'd say probably go to Bergen because then you get like a big, nice city, but you also have the fjords in the close proximity to you.
Mm-hmm. Are there places in Norway that people still practice kind of the classic old religion?
I would say no, just my first guess, because Norway isn't a very religious country. We are traditional Christians. So I would say most people would probably say that they're Christians, but you're Christian around Christmas time and Easter because that's when you'd go to church. Other than because it's mainly just for like the idea and the community that you get around holidays. So I would say for the most part, nothing for like the really old religion remains, but there are kind of Bible belts, I guess you could say, along the southern part of Norway. That's definitely like the one place in Norway where people are still pretty Christian, and you have a lot of youth groups and stuff that are there. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you know a singer called Aurora?
Yeah, the Aurora Borealis, or what? Yeah, the Northern Lights.
Well,
is that what you're talking about?
no, is there like I guess there's a singer who goes by Aurora who
I think
might
she's
be from your town.
Iceland? Or no? Is she from Norway? The fact that I don't know the answer to that should tell you. I thought she was Icelandic, but I was gonna put like a little part of Norwegian music in here, but then whenever I looked up Norwegian artists, I was like, I don't know who any of these people are. But I've heard that name before. I did not know she was Norwegian, so that's on me. But yeah, oops.
All right. Are there particular regions of Norway that have more of the Sami population?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this part right here, like up north, is definitely where the Sami reside. They do like what's it called? Reindeer.
Yeah, reindeer herding.
Yes, herding, thank you.
Okay.
And so that can go even like down to kind of like mid here, but I would say for the most part, it's definitely like up north because the Sami population is not exclusive to Norway. They go across like Sweden and Finland too. So it's just kind of like the northern part of Scandinavia.
Do you have any other fun facts about the Sami people?
Oh, I'm not the best person. I wish my best friend was here. She is Sami. I'm trying to think of something she's told me. Unfortunately, we have a very like the history with the Sami people isn't super positive, which I think is kind of goes like it's just general for a lot of indigenous people. So unfortunately, we're not taught a lot about Sami culture or just like we're taught history now for sure because they're trying to kind of like mitigate whatever happened and really like make people aware of it. But yeah, we don't know, we're not taught a lot about basically just how Sami people live and what their culture is like. So I've learned most of it from just having a close friend when I came to college.
Any other fun facts about Norway? I think you were thinking just general fun facts.
Oh, fun facts about Norway.
You shared some good ones, so if that's all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll stick with what I got. Thank you. Sorry, it's hard
Perfect.
to come up with something.
And Google says the artist Aurora is from Stavanger, so some research for you.
Oh my gosh. I literally just learned that. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know her personally, so. But that's cool though. That's cool. Even I learned something about my own hometown.